ice is dropped in taped fashion, and as Thursdays go, it is time to catch up with. All right, so Niko, I was looking at the bio, and I want to make sure that I have it right. Reportero columnista at Fútbol MLS, at Sounder at Heart, y editor ejecutivo de El Sports Pulso. See, now I'm reading the Twitter bio, and I'm trying to get it all down right. Con toda la cobertura de MLS, Sounders, Seahawks y otros deportes. Was that anywhere close?
Wow, that is excellent. Great pronunciation on that Spanish, man. Congratulations.
Well,
That is excellent.
it's Thursday. It's Thursdays with Niko and his coffee. How many cups have you had so far?
I'm just getting ready to get going on my first cup of coffee because I had a little bit of a delayed morning today. It was a little bit slower than I like it to be, but I tried not to stress out. Try to just kind of let it be part of my day and not make my day. So yeah, I'm definitely on my first big strong cup of coffee right now.
All right. Well, Niko Moreno, Sounder at Hearts, PulsoSports up in the Northwest, and as always, it is Thursdays with Niko and his coffee, and a lot of folks were absolutely jazzed at the notion of hearing what you had to say about what went down last weekend at Lumen for the 1-1 draw between Seattle and Atlanta United. So, from your perspective, what did you think about what happened?
First of all, I'd like to thank all the audience and all the fan base from down there that reaches out constantly and has nothing but good things to say about me. Really fills me. It's important to me to hear from everybody, and I'm really thankful. In terms of the Atlanta Sounders game, it was just as we thought, right? We talked about it. I love it when things kind of play out the way we foresee it sometimes, and we spoke of the ability that Atlanta could have to pin back Seattle, and they really did that. They did it in various ways. The most obvious is their ability to just hold possession and just control the tempo of the game, but by just keeping the ball. So I thought that Heinze did a fantastic job at making sure that they would not allow Seattle to transition, that they would not allow Seattle to have the ball. So it was an excellent game for a team that has not gave you a full 9 minutes of great soccer, but in this one, I thought that they had a good game plan. They executed correctly, and even though they're still lacking that final third efficiency, and there isn't a player that is maybe the compass, the facilitator that they've had in the past, and a guy like Pity Martinez, they were able to at least hold possession, create chances, and they did a great job. I mean, you have to praise Heinze and this Atlanta team for coming to Lumen in a difficult field with fans in the stands. 11,000 in the stands, and they were able to just play their game. So they have been able to make them as uncomfortable as I've seen it in a very long time. Brian Smetzer, as well as Christian Roldan, both gave full credit to Atlanta. But I think that the true narrative here is that Heinze continues to build his empire, his philosophy, his style of play, and is getting some results. So it's very good for Atlanta. On the other end, for Seattle, definitely a learning experience. I've always thought that adversity creates champions, and Seattle being able to get put against the ropes. Maybe things didn't work as well as they thought. Whenever they did transition, because they did have a few moments in which they had those transitions that were the bread and butter and the reason why they've been so effective this season. They just were not crisp in the final third. It was either a pass too far out to Will Bruin or a unusual bad decision for Christian Roldan to not pass it to Will or pass it to Raul. So those last moments and in the final third, they were just not as clinical as we're typically are used to seeing from Seattle this season. So for Seattle, a learning experience against a good team with a lot of characters. So just a great game overall.
Well, and I mean, I think a lot of folks looked at the goal that Seattle put on the board, in the first handful of minutes, and everybody was sitting there saying, okay, Seattle got their goal. They're going to lock it down, and it's just going to be, it's going to be another day for the Sounders to get full points. But as you mentioned, and as Schmetzer and Christian Roldan mentioned post-match, it was one of those where they were pinned in, and it was an uncomfortable day, even with a 1-goal lead, where Atlanta kept pressuring and pressuring and pressuring, and it just seemed like Seattle was perpetually uncomfortable, even though they had that 1-goal advantage.
Oh, absolutely. They were absolutely uncomfortable in every way. They weren't able to. They had trouble building out of the back at the day. So Atlanta did a good job at canceling their angles in order to get out of their own half. Just in terms of discipline and knowing how to press, not necessarily incredibly high, but just knowing how to press when they were coming out of the back. So it was definitely that. There was so much frustration in the bench in order to regain possession that Brian Smetzer brought in a young Danny Leyva for Will Bruin, added an extra man in the midfield to just try to get it back from Atlanta. And that inability to do so just continue to build. And you saw in that second half, uh, one step at a time, and with one more player in the midfield, Seattle just started dropping farther back on their block, farther back on their block. And Atlanta, in their own way, with their own possession, not necessarily so vertical, but they still were able to just press Seattle back into their own third. So it was a real chess match, and I thought that Heinze did a great job at getting the most of it in this game.
And when you get this, and for me, it's sometimes it's fun to watch chess matches because it's almost like you can see how managers are going to act and react in these situations. When how are you when you're watching a chess match? How completely and totally locked in are you when you're seeing something that could be that Vulcan 3D chess that we see on Star Trek, or it could be Kasparov and Karpov and Bobby Fischer. When you're seeing a chess match come out in front of you, what does that make you? How does that make you feel when you're watching a soccer match that folds out that way?
Yeah, I really love it. I love trying to see how each staff, coaching staff in general, begins to get close to the main head coach and draw things up. I like to see the coaches maybe get onto the coaching box and start moving guys around or telling someone to press, someone to drop. I like to see those leaders on the field in here. Joe Paulo, I think by his movement, he was a lot more. He was a lot deeper than he should be under this formation, and I thought that was telling because it was in credit to what Atlanta was doing. So I like to see those leaders on the field. On the side of Atlanta, I was looking at how far Ibarra was pushing up and his positioning when he was playing, as well as Marcelino Moreno, who I thought had a decent game. I like just to see how those pieces begin to shift throughout the game and the influence that the coaches are having on the pitch, as well as the halftime adjustments. I thought that Atlanta continued to build out of what they had done in the first half, and they weren't wind up to just regain the goal, so they weren't disorganized, or they were not too over anxious to get that goal and stay true to what they were trying to do throughout the game.
All right, let's go back and take a look at what else happened around the league last weekend. And probably the biggest thing that sticks out to me is that Chicago gets a win against Inter Miami, and FC Cincinnati gets a win against CF Montreal. The teams that we thought were going to be at the bottom, stay at the bottom. You may as well just grab the shovel, put the dirt on them, close the casket. You get those teams that get results this past weekend. What else stuck out to you?
Well, that Portland game, the Portland game for me was telling. We talked about this. I am glad that I was not buying on that high rising stock of LA Galaxy.
Kept your juice
Portland,
boxes in check,
absolutely.
brother, didn't you?
Absolutely. I mean, we really hit it on. I've been thinking that they're pretenders, despite of some of the results, despite of some of the um, mirrors, I like to call it, that you tend to see from these
Yeah,
teams.
the
And
fun
Portland, that's right, exactly, absolutely. On the other end, Portland, with a lot of injuries, and man, that tackle
Mhm.
season ending for Andy Polo. I mean, my goodness, that was absolutely tragic. And man, I really send my best to Andy Polo. You know, we have a good relationship with him, and he's such a good guy overall. So wish him nothing but the best. But it was telling how Portland was still able to um, play their game, completely cancel out Javier Hernandez, canceled service into him, and they were able to play their game. Mora gets back on the scoreboard for this team, which is very key, very important. If there's something that sometimes happens to Timbers, is that inability to maybe have a goal scorer, and they were able to do it here. So I think that Portland is a lot higher, should be a lot higher in the rankings than they are, and they're going to start beginning to show that. So I thought that was telling this weekend.
So if you were, and we asked Dylan Butler this earlier in the week, if you were the grand exalted poobah of discipline for Major League Soccer, you're the dude that has the gavel, you're wearing the black robe, you're sitting at the seat of judgment here. What would you do with Derek Williams from LA Galaxy for the tackle on Andy Polo?
I had a tough time with this one because I had some conversations with some colleagues, some other insiders throughout the league, and initially, and I still think that he should at least get 2 games,
Mm-hmm.
uh, just because of the plain disregard and um, just the way he came into Andy Polo and was not able to slow down and was in so late. But there was a play prior to that, and I was first aware of that by Twitter. Somebody mentioned that there had been a collision in which Will he was pulled off.
Yeah,
From
30 seconds earlier. Yeah.
That's right, on a concussion protocol. So did that have anything to do with it? Was he totally not there there yet? Because the way he was using his body, it just seemed like he wasn't in full control. So I went back, I looked at it a couple of times. Some maybe did have something to do with it, but either way, it was such a reckless collision that I would have to give him 2 games regardless of what happened. But I would like to talk to him if I was that guy and seeing what his perspective was on the whole thing, and if that collision, that concussion had anything to do with it. What I am not okay with, and I want to go ahead and put this out here, is the death threats and racial
Yeah.
attacks that obviously this player's getting. I'm not okay with that. No fan should feel the necessity to attack another human being in that sense.
Absolutely.
So definitely not for that, but definitely a bad tackle in the sports regard.
Let's go to LAFC here, and I think that once again, we've talked about LAFC with Carlos Vela, with and without Carlos Vela. It is a marked difference with LAFC when it comes to their attack, and it seems like the other 10 guys who are out there when Carlos Vela is present, they feel more emboldened. They feel, that's like the lion heart is there that's not there when Carlos Vela is not there. And Vela shows up, he's on the pitch, and they get a 2-1 win over Colorado. Are you getting the same vibe that I am from LAFC, where it's an entirely different level of confidence with him and without him?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you see this in any team. A Barcelona team with Messi is one thing. Then without him, this Sounders team this year has been perhaps a rare commodity in which Niko's not in and they're still able to perform. But usually, if there's a big player out, I mean, it's huge on a team, but none more than this LAFC team, because there's so much quality around that just not having that piece in Vela just completely ruins everybody else's positioning on the field, chance creating, everything. And against a very good, so far, Colorado team, I thought LAFC did wonderfully with Carlos Vela, because he just amplifies everybody's ability to just get closer on goal. He demands more respect out of the defensive lines, and you could see how the center backs were always looking about where Carlos Vela was at in this three-man back line. You could tell that the job was to attempt to neutralize Carlos Vela, and it didn't work. If you look at the drawing board of where LAFC players were throughout the game, it is almost as a magnet getting close to Carlos Vela. Everybody's getting close to where he's at. The chances come from that side. Diego Rossi looked better, easier. Passes in between, even from the back line to the midfield and into the attacking third, they all went to Bella. So he definitely changes this team. And, you could say that he's the difference between a mid-of-the-table LAFC and a top contending LAFC. And he just looked good. He makes everybody better. Diego Rossi getting those 2 goals was not a coincidence. They came when Carlos Vela was on the field. So definitely a different LAFC. Before this game, we talked about Bradley, about details and the right passes. And Vela gives you that. He gives you the right passes, the right decisions. So he completely changes the game for LAFC.
Niko Moreno hanging out with us here for his Thursdays with Niko and his coffee, PulsoSports, Sounder of Heart, and going through everything that went down in MLS the past week. Is it just me, or when it comes to Sporting Kansas City, it seems like Peter Vermes, and it might just be because they're in the middle of the country, they're kind of in a quiet space, but every single year it seems that Sporting Kansas City does what they do. Everyone looks around them, it seems, when you're looking at the standings. And then by the time you get to the playoffs, you're like, oh, yeah, they're Sporting Kansas City. They're the 2 seed. They're the 3 seed. And they always come in and make noise. Obviously, having a healthy Tim Melia back helps that as well. We talked about players missing and such. But it just seems like Sporting Kansas City, to me, is one of the quietest success stories year in and year out in Major League Soccer. And they knocked off San Jose 3-1 last week.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And you put a very good reason in why perhaps they get overlooked often. They also typically don't have the huge DP player, with the exception of this year. Alan Pulido is a world type player. He's Mexican national team. He gives you quality. So I'm still not saying that Sporting Kansas City is just going to completely dominate the table. San Jose has not been very good, especially not pulling results. So it was a good game for Kansas City, but I don't want to overhype them so much. However, I would say that, there was a lot of conversations throughout social media about, is Kansas City really the second best team in the Western Conference? And I would say yes, because of everything that you just said. They're well coached. They have a good midfield. They have a very good attack in Alan Pulido. Anytime Desailly is playing on the left side, he looks very good. And in the back line, they've been able to just have certain coherency this season that it's telling of a good coach team. And so, yeah, this Sporting Kansas City team, under the radar, because everybody's looking at LAFC, Timbers, Sounders, and Sporting Kansas City in their own little way. They're going to continue to build. They're going to continue to win. But then we'll see. Because another knock on Sporting Kansas City is that when they get to the playoffs, perhaps they just kind of fall apart. So can they do it this year? Can they really be that team that with all this talent around them, young talent, and obviously the internationals, can they really get there? But they're a very good team. I really do think that they're the second best team, regardless of what we can say about the potential that AFC has or the potential that Timbers has. If you look at the overall picture, Would you just talk about Malia, one of the best goalkeepers in the league? You need that. Timbers doesn't have that. I think there's questions mark there. You look at how well this team has played in the beginning of the season. There's been consistency. LAFC hasn't had that, so you cannot overlook at this team. But perhaps who they are as a franchise and what people's idea and stigma of this club is continues to allow them to overlook them.
In the East, I mean, we knew that the East was going to be an absolute street fight this year because you sit there and you look at the teams that are there, and you could think of the teams that would not be a part of the playoff discussion more than the ones who would be. So you can sit there and knock out maybe a Cincinnati or a Chicago. So, of course, what happens? They win this past weekend. But you look at everybody who's north of the playoff bar right now in the East. New England, Orlando, Philly, Nashville, Atlanta, NYC, and Montreal. Columbus, below the playoff bar right now. Miami, we kind of talked about them a little bit. Red Bulls, DC, Toronto probably still getting adjusted to Chris Armas, and then Chicago and Cincinnati. When you look at who's above the playoff bar right now in the East, I think it just once again symbolizes how tight things are going to be all season long.
No, absolutely, and it's a great race, and in the East, there's such a variety of soccer. You got Orlando City, which is an Oscar Pareja-ish team, which it thrives on organization and being compact, and a Pedro Gallese who has been fantastic on goal, and Papi's ability to just work with what he has. I mean, Tesho Akindele, it's not anybody's first choice, in my opinion, at 9, but he knows how to work him perfectly. Even without Nani, they get the win. Philadelphia, obviously, he's been working for a long time, so they have a progress. They know how to win. Nashville, in their own way, a very compact team that perhaps works a lot off of that ability to just frustrate teams and obviously have the ability to once their attack is working as it has as of recent, they can win games. Then you got New England with Bruce Arenas, head coach, a fantastic attack. Gustavo Bo looking fantastic. Carlos Hill, and for me, my favorite and the team who I believe is going to be a wrecking ball once it's all said and done, New York City FC.
Really?
They lost. Yes, I really do. They lost a game against Columbus because of the brilliance of Lucas Solarian. But that game was in the bag. It was in the bag, and in 2 free kicks, Lucas Solarian destroyed the dreams of a whole city. I mean, it was crazy to see, but that's what happened in this one. Honestly, I thought New York was the better team throughout this one. Yes, Atlanta had Columbus had the possession throughout the game, but it was New York that created the danger with Medina, with Castellan. I mean, they were really getting there for Columbus. They just weren't able to finish. And then Salarajan just kind of kills the game in the 94th minute with that beautiful second free kick. That I mean, man, it was just textbook completely. And I love the shrug of the shoulders, and he's just saying, hey, this is what I do. But he just completely ruined it. But I think New York is a fantastic team. I mean, we just talked yesterday to Tejas Magno, who's coming in from Vasco da Gama. He's supposed to be this fantastic player, and he is. He always told us a little bit about the knee issue he has at this time, and he doesn't feel 100%. But they have that. They have Santiago Rodriguez coming in June. Sources told me that he should be arriving, if everything goes well, with his father's visa and passport and all of the migratory process that he has to do. He should be in New York by next Wednesday. So Santiago Rodriguez is another fantastic South American young player. So there's so much depth and talent in New York that I don't see them not being this juggernaut in August and throughout the playoffs. I mean, watch out for New York. Everybody's talking about New England. Everybody's talking about Philadelphia. Watch out for New York.
All right, time to talk about the weekend that will be, and we're going to do it a little differently this week. I don't know if when you were growing up you watched The Price is Right, the game show. But they had one game that was there, and I'm going to put a bit of a different twist on it. It was Cliffhanger. And basically, you'd have to guess the price of a particular item, and every dollar that you were off, the cliffhanger dude would climb the mountain, and then when he got past a certain level, then he'd fall off the mountain, and then you would lose. The idea was for you not to lose. So what I'm going to do, this actually might be more like pressure luck. I take it back. This is pressure luck this week. This is how we're going to do it. I'm going to run down the games, complete with the juice boxes. If you want to talk about a particular game, you go ahead and say stop, and then we'll stop and we'll talk about it.
Okay, I love it.
So here we go. Chicago and Montreal. Chicago's at a minus 114. Your draw's at a plus 250. CF Montreal's at a plus 319. Also at 1 o'clock, Red Bulls and Orlando City. Red Bulls a plus 124. Your draw's a plus 241. Orlando City's a plus 217. 3 o'clock Eastern. Columbus hosting Toronto. Columbus at a plus 114. Draws a plus 250. Toronto's a plus 229.
Also, I want to that one.
There we go. All right. What's on your mind?
Obviously, a Toronto team that I still continue to think could be a lot better. I don't trust Chris Armas's tactics, quite honestly. Not a huge fan of how he builds teams. But I want to see Soltedo against this Columbus team. You're starting to see a little bit of that flair, that ability to just do his own game. For a Toronto team that should be a lot better than it's looked as of late. And against the Columbus team that continuously, we just saw what Lucas Larajan did against New York City. So this is a game that I'm really going to be looking into some of the star power and how it can not inspire, but maybe change the trajectory of how things are going for each one of these teams. So that's an interesting one for me in the East.
All right. Also at 3 o'clock, FC Cincinnati and New England Revolution at home at TQL. Cincinnati's a plus 252. Your draw is a plus 266. New England Revolution even money at a plus 100. 3:30 Eastern Time. Atlanta United hosting Nashville SC. Atlanta United a plus 123. Draws a plus 234. Nashville on the road is a plus 225. 5 o'clock Eastern. LAFC hosting NYC. LAFC, a minus 128, decided home favorite. Your draw's a plus 290. NYC on the road is a plus 325.
Well, I'll take that one. I'll take that one. That's a good one. Those numbers are telling, I guess, but I would take New York in that game. I mean, I put my money there. I mean, that's a tough game. I understand, it's at Bank of California, but once again, I think New York City has a lot of firepower up top against an LAFC team that has constantly had issues in that back line. I mean, I know that they did a good job against Diego Rubio this weekend, but I'm not completely sold there yet. So that's a good one to see. And it could really shift things as well. Because New York, obviously, in a tight race, if they get those 3 points against a good LAFC team at Bank of California, that'll tell you more about what you need to know from New York. And if LAFC can build on that win from Colorado and just, let's say, control the game and Diego Rossi and Vela have another outstanding game, then that'll tell you where LAFC's momentum is shifting. So that's a great game for betting purposes and for MLS purposes as well.
All right, 7 o'clock Eastern Time. Cali Classico, the Galaxy in San Jose. The Galaxy are favored at a minus 101. Your draw's a plus 274. San Jose in the Cali Classico is a plus 252. Next up, you can reserve your stops. So I'll keep going, but you can reserve and you can double back if you want. 8 o'clock Eastern, Miami and DC United. Inter Miami a minus 132. Your draws a plus 263. DC United a plus 372. 8:30 Eastern, Sporting Kansas City and Houston. Sporting a minus 143. Houston a plus 278. And for Houston, the Dynamo are almost a plus 400. 21.
Plus 400, really? Wow.
Yeah, plus 400 for Houston.
This is a good one, too. Wow, that's crazy. But, I mean, let's talk about this one, just because I feel like we haven't gave Houston enough credit. I happen to think that Tab Ramos' ability to finally get his philosophy on the field is an excellent one. They have really not spent a lot of money because they
Mm-hmm.
haven't. I mean, if you look at this team, is just players that have been good in other clubs. Uruti, who's been all around the league, and is such a wild card at times. You don't really know what you're going to get with him, but has looked fantastic. And I have to give it to Tab Ramos for being able to reignite this player. Fafa Picault out wide doing his thing. Rodriguez, that although he plays out wide, he's been able to use those channels inside, and they have looked good. So honestly, I gotta say a lot of good things about this Dynamo team. They just beat a good Vancouver team that I continue to think that has a lot of potential. So that's a good one. That's a good game coming up for this weekend. I would take Houston on this one. Despite the plus, Sporting Kansas City. Obviously, we just talked about them. It's you know, it's an interesting game for them just because yes, they are this solid team, but I think Houston could put them in some trouble. And if I could double up on my money, man, I would put it on Houston on this one.
There you go, and new owners too, who apparently have purchased the club for 400 extra large, and that hopefully could mean some new things for Houston as well. Two more games on Saturday, and I know that you're going to stop me each game on Sunday, so let me go through and blow through these. Colorado a minus 130 at home, 9 o'clock Eastern. Your draws a plus 297, FC Dallas a plus 316, 9:30 Eastern for MLS After Dark. RSL's a plus 108. Minnesota for the draw, a plus 263. Minnesota United on the road at RSL, plus 234. That's kind of testy. Two games on Sunday, 7 Eastern, Philadelphia hosting Portland Timbers. The Union a minus 110. Your draw is a plus 293 in the composite, and Portland to win at Philly, a plus 261.
Well, definitely a couple of good games there. Interesting on that Philadelphia Timbers team. I mean, we've talked about Timbers enough. I do feel like they have a lot of question marks in the back end for this Portland team. That's probably their Achilles heel. It's not just in the defensive end, but I mean, whenever you've had as many injuries on goal as Portland has had, I think that you have to go back and think that it's going to be difficult for them in that instance. But then again, well coached, good up top, good in the midfield. But I do want to see them go against a good Philadelphia side that is always is well coached, and they know how to play the counter. So this is a good game. I think that if Portland is able to show up and perhaps hide some of those deficiencies they have in the back end, because I mean, I don't think Tuliloma is anybody's first choice at center back, right? And we can't, like I said, we can't go back and talk enough about the injuries they've had on goal and what Ketterer can do on goal. But in reality, if Timbers can pull it together and somehow next man up mentality kind of win this game, I mean, watch out because they can just start coming downhill. And obviously, a good game here that will be at Lumen Field. This Austin FC
there
team
you go. That's I was waiting for you to hit the. You pre-stopped me. You're just like, yeah, I'm gonna head right into this one.
That's right. That's the other one that I know is coming. That is a big one. Is your prime time on Sunday, and this is going to be a really good game. I know that there's a lot of doubters on Austin, and this a lot of fans were not happy with what happened against Nashville, but I think that they're still trying to come together. Cecilia Dominguez did not have a good game. I still think that Austin, it's a good 9 for this to work. All due respect to Austin, I mean, I'm not saying that he's not. I'm just saying they could do a little bit better at that position. But this is going to be a great game, man. Pochettino and Alex Ring going against João Paulo and Christian Roldan. I mean, man, that midfield battle is going to be amazing, right? I mean, it's just big time. Not just that, but also, how can this 3-man backline that has looked so good in the teriyaki chicken powered 3-man backline,
chicken teriyaki FC, brother.
That's right. That's right. With Nuhu and Yamar, how can they really try to stop and slow down Dominguez coming out wide, Redis, who I think is continuously trying to get better. But I think once he finds his form, he's going to be an excellent player in MLS. So this is going to be a good one, a big game for Seattle as well. Brian Smetzer this week talked about putting all that frustration and everything they learned against whatever they're called themselves Austin. Like he just completely he has no cares about what they're called, and just you could tell that all he wants to do is get to Sunday, and regardless of who Austin brings into the table, he just wants to annihilate this team.
Oh, wow.
So expect a Seattle Sounders team that is going to be motivated, it's going to be aggressive, and is going to be looking forward to just completely putting behind that Atlanta game that really pushed their will and test their will last weekend. So it's going to be a really good game.
All right, so here's your juice box numbers. As of you and I talking right this very second, Seattle at home is a minus 164, so prohibitive favorite. Your draw is a plus 307, and Austin FC Verde on the road is a plus 422 as they're heading into Lumen. So basically what you're telling me from the conversations that you had and that everybody had with Brian Schmetzer leading into this match is that I should start on my fantasy team Cleveland in net, Nuhu on defense, and Christian Roldan in the midfield. Is that what you're telling me?
That's what I'm telling you. I'm definitely telling you that. I would add Raul Ruidiaz. I mean, I have him on my fantasy team, and he's there. He's my captain every week. So I would definitely put him on. I see him having his way against a very young Romagna in this one. I think that him and Beasler sometimes don't see eye to eye, and they tend to leave a lot of room in between them. So I expect a big game from Raul Ruidiaz. So if you want him, Raul Ruidiaz, perhaps a Yamar, Gomez Andrade in this one, and Stephen Cleveland. But yes, load up on Sounders. This is going to be a good game at Lumen Field, and I expect a really good performance from the best thing in the league right now.
All right, time to let everybody else know what's going on at Sounder at Heart and PulsoSports. What's going on that folks need to be reading and viewing and paying attention to these days?
Hey, well, we have a real good one, and I know I promised this before in your show. It didn't happen. Now we did. It's already recorded and ready to be edited and put out, and it's that exclusive one-on-one with the most dangerous 9 in MLS, in my opinion. Raul Ruidiaz, the one that could beat you off a corner, mid-range shot, on-ball play. He does a little bit of everything. So we had a real good conversation with him about his good start in 2020. He scored 12 goals in 7 games. He already has 6, half of that. So we talked about him, his good start, playing with the Peruvian national team. He's already been pre-selected and called up for the qualifiers that are coming up. We also asked him if he thinks he's going to get called up for Copa America. We talk about some of the opponents he's had at the beginning of the season. Me knowing him and understanding how well he plays whenever he goes against another powerful attacker. We talk about facing Bella, facing Rossi, facing Javier Hernandez here at Lumen Field. So a really good conversation with him about a lot of the young players that are coming out of Seattle. So it's going to be in Spanish, so bear with me, guys. I don't think we're going to have translation for this one just because we want to get it out as soon as possible. But a really good conversation with him. I'm going to have an article on Sandra Hard with a lot of the best quotes from him and everything that has to do with the goal scorer here. So that's what's coming up for Sandra Hard and for PulsoSports.
And for those that want to follow along on social media, follow you, follow Pulso, follow Sounder at Heart. How do they do it?
Absolutely. So Niko at El Rolo NW, El Rolo LW, PulsoSports at Sports Pulso. Obviously, Sounder Hard at Sounder Hard. That is where you find all of our information. Follow us. I try to give you guys my very best. The end to end, we're going to do a couple of spaces here and there to talk about MLS, talk about this Austin game on Sunday is going to be a big one. So stay tuned, guys. Thank you for all the support. Hit me up on Twitter. I love to respond to everybody's questions. So feel free to do so. And just happy to be back on with you guys, man.
As always, Niko, it's great to have you on Thursdays to break everything down in MLS, especially with the team at the top of the power rankings and with what happened with the interest down here with soccer down here and the interest up there in the Northwest of what happened last weekend. Niko, as always, great to have you on. We will catch up with you next week, my friend.
Thank you. Have a good one, my friend.